Welcome to another video on project management. Today we will talk about the stakeholder domain. This is the stakeholder domain. We are going to cover some aspects from the PMBOK 7 and also touch on some aspects from the PMBOK 6 guide. So what we are going to cover is the following points: the definition of a stakeholder, the key concepts, tailoring, emerging trends, and agile adaptive considerations. Then we are going to talk about the stakeholder classification models and also the stakeholder engagement matrix. We're talking about the skills needed to manage stakeholders and the whole stakeholder management process. Stakeholder management includes the processes required to identify these people or groups or organizations that could impact or be impacted by the project, to analyze their expectations and the impact on the project, and to develop appropriate management strategies for effectively engaging them. So who is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is an individual, a group, or an organization who may affect or be affected by a decision, activity, or outcome of a project, program, or a portfolio. Now, these could be your team members. It could be a vendor, it could be government regulators, or it could be a sponsor. So stakeholders encompass a lot of different people in the organization and also outside of the organization. So we are going to look at the structured way of identifying, prioritizing, and engaging stakeholders, because they can make or break the project success. So immediately after your project charter has gained approval, stakeholder identification can begin, and it's a continuous journey. Now, what are some of the trends in stakeholder management? So we need to identify all the stakeholders in the project. So we have to ensure that all the team members are involved in this process of stakeholder engagement. You have to review this stakeholder community regularly, because this can add to the risk in a project. So we have to capture the value of stakeholder engagement, both positive and negative. So what are some of the tailoring considerations? Stakeholder diversity. So how many stakeholders are there? How diverse is the culture within this community? What is the complex relationship between in this community? And what type of communication technology is available? What support mechanisms? Because it's always good to check with the stakeholders what type of communication they would prefer, whether it's an email update every week, message, or a call, or face-to-face conversation. It's always good to establish a communication management plan with the stakeholders. For an agile environment, we need to actively engage and participate with stakeholders. So this happens during events like during the sprint review. So we need to engage and participate with stakeholders. This can happen during the review where the demo is done of the project, of the product. So engaging directly with stakeholders rather than going through layers of management. It is good to engage stakeholders early and build trust, and thus reduce the cost of changes. It's also good to have postings and information radiators in your project so that stakeholders can get visibility on your project. Now we come to stakeholder analysis. So stakeholder analysis is the process of identifying the people within the project, grouping them according to their levels of participation, interest, and influence. Now there are two criteria for this. It's the power and the interest, and it's called the power interest grid. So there are those stakeholders with high power and low interest, or high power and high interest, low power, low interest, low power, and high interest. And so accordingly, we need to manage them by keeping them satisfied, monitoring them, managing them closely, or keeping them informed. So what is this purpose of the stakeholder analysis? It is to enlist the help of key organizational players to gain early alignment with the stakeholders on the goals and objectives of the project, and to also address conflicts early on in the project. So here we see a stakeholder engagement matrix. Now, if we classify stakeholders, there are 5 types. Those that are unaware of your project and its impact, those that are resistant to change. Some of them are neutral, neither supportive nor resistant. Then there are the supportive stakeholders. And finally, there are the leading stakeholders who are very actively engaged in your project success. So we need to convert these stakeholders from the current state to a desired state, from an unaware state to a supportive state. So this is by way of engagement, we can convert these stakeholders from the current state to our desired state. What are some of the management skills? We need to build trust. We need to engage them early. We need to resolve conflicts. We need to practice the art of active listening, facilitate consensus, negotiate agreements, etc. Now, this is from the PMBOK 6 guide. It's the process of identifying stakeholders. And what are some of the inputs to this process? The project charter, the business case, the project management plan, the documents, agreements, and the environmental factors. And what are some of the tools that you use to identify stakeholders? You can do expert judgment. You can do data analysis. You can have questionnaires, surveys, brainstorming, and meetings. And that is how you can identify all the stakeholders in your project. And what are the outputs? You have a stakeholder register. You have change requests. You have a requirements management plan, a communications management plan, a risk management plan, a stakeholder engagement plan, and then you have the project document updates. After identifying the stakeholders, you need to plan the engagement. And some of the tools are like you have decision-making, prioritization of the stakeholders, data gathering, expert judgment. These are the tools. The inputs are the same, and the output is your stakeholder engagement plan. This is based on the needs, expectation, interests, and potential of the project. Manage stakeholder engagement. We need to keep the stakeholders engaged based on their requirements. So for that, we need the project management plan, the risk management plan, stakeholder engagement plan. And some of the tools and techniques are communication skills, interpersonal team skills, conflict management, political awareness, observation. And the outputs are your project management plan, the change requests, the stakeholder engagement plan. So this is from the PMBOK 6, the input tools, techniques, and outputs. Finally, we have to also monitor the stakeholder engagement so that we are keeping them updated throughout the project so that there are no surprises. So in summary, a stakeholder is an individual, a group, or an organization who may affect or be affected by your project. The different stakeholder classification models, we have talked about the power and interest grid. And the stakeholder engagement matrix helps in visualizing the current and desired states of various stakeholders. And we also covered the 4 processes that are used to identify stakeholders, plan the stakeholder management, plan the engagement, and finally monitor the stakeholder engagement. Now let's check your understanding of this domain. Well, when you answer questions in the PMP exam, one of the methods is to strike off those choices which are not logical or which do not make sense. So try to minimize the choices so that you can arrive at the correct answer. Now, for the first question, what are the dimensions measured on a stakeholder grid? The first answer is access and availability. B is expertise and influence. C is interest and power. And D is motive and opportunity. So this is a direct question based on what we have just gone through. You can pause your video at this point, think over the question and the answers, and check your answer. So it's not Access and availability. We have not read about access and availability or expertise and influence. So you can straight away discount most of these answers, motive and opportunity. We have only heard about interest and power. And so this is the right answer. The second question, which of the following is not a classification of stakeholder engagement? Is it unaware, resistant, leading, or participating? You can pause your video at this point, think over the question, read it again, and then check your answer. Now, the different types of stakeholders we read was unaware, resistant, leading, supportive, and neutral. And so there is no term called participating. So this is the odd one out. The rest are all types of stakeholders. So the correct answer is participating. You go to the next question. Henry is a long-time employee of a large organization. He's a subject matter expert in the accounts payable function and is a passionate supporter of the new financial system that is being implemented. Henry is respected in his department, even though he's an individual contributor without a lot of formal authority. How would you classify Henry on a power influence grid? Is it high power, high interest A, high power, low interest B, low power, high interest C, or low power, low interest D? Read the question carefully for some keywords on interest and power. And then you can pause the video and think carefully and then answer the question. So if you read here carefully, Henry is a passionate supporter of the new financial system. So that shows Henry has a lot of interest. So this shows that he has a lot of interest in the project. And at the same time, it is said here that he has very low formal authority, almost no form authority. So he's low power and high interest. So the answer should be C. The next question. A project manager has recently been assigned to a long-running project and wants to know the key influencers on the project and their level of involvement. The best document to get this kind of information is A, stakeholder register, B, stakeholder management plan, C, project staffing plan, D, project management plan. You can pause the video at this point, think over the question, and then check your answer. So in this question, you can safely rule out project staffing plan, which is more to do with project staffing or resources, and project management plan. So coming to stakeholder register and stakeholder management plan, a stakeholder management plan is more a comprehensive document. And if you want to know the key influencers on the project and their level of involvement, it would be better to look at the stakeholder register, which is choice A, which is the correct answer. And finally, the last question. Anna has recently taken over a project as the project manager. The project is early in the executing phase. Although all the key stakeholders signed off on the project scope statement, Anna learns that some of the key stakeholders do not fully understand the project scope. The stakeholders' constant support is crucial for the success of the project. What must Anna do? So is it A, conduct one-to-one meeting sessions with the key stakeholders to ensure they understand the scope? B, email the copy of the scope statement to the stakeholders? C, don't do anything since all the stakeholders signed the scope statement? D, email the copy of the scope management plan to the key project stakeholders. Now, these are scenario-based questions that you will find on the exam. So take a pause the video, think over the question, read the question carefully, and check whether your answer is right. Now here, you can straight away rule off C because it says don't do anything. And that is a very bad choice for a project manager. If to ask a project manager not to do anything is like having no initiative, not proactive, no initiative. So C is ruled out. The next, B and D, emailing a copy of a scope statement or scope management plan to the stakeholder is like, it is a very tedious for such a problem. It's not the right thing to do, because you are expecting that the stakeholder open the email and check and to just this. The easier method is conducting a one-to-one meeting with the stakeholders and ensure that they understand the project scope. So this is the right thing to do for a project manager. So the question here, the answer for this question is choice A, conduct one-to-one meeting sessions with the stakeholders to ensure they understand the project scope. So I hope that this session, this video has helped you understand about the stakeholder domain. If you're interested in getting more information about the PMP certification exam, you can enroll with Apex PM Academy, and we can help you in your certification process. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. Thank you very much.